I'm sure you've watched The Last Dance. I'm sure you've been trying to keep up to date with everything that's going on there. A lot of people talked about how there should have been an episode 11 and 12 about Washington and then his time, dealing with the players there, being a president, going to GM, then being a player. Like there was so much of Michael that was left that we didn't really get to see finish off the story in a sense. Um, do you think an episode 11 and 12 would have helped the perception around Michael, or do you think it would have hurt the perception around Michael?
I don't think it necessarily would have mattered.
Okay.
As far as how he's leading the Charlotte group, I mean, you can kind of, piece in, those few years that he had with Washington. And then as far as, his teammates and how he interacted or dealt with teammates, I think it's pretty consistent. I mean, he would get on you. He would talk trash to you. But again, you see in The Last Dance, he's talking about putting you in that fire before you actually reach the fire to see how you'll react. And as I think back, I could remember conversations that he would have with Brendan Haywood or Jared Jeffries or Kwame, for even that matter, of let me test these guys out. They know they have me on a high pedestal, but let me see how far I can take, my mentality, see how far I can really take it to see how they react. And that's kind of how I look at it now, is that I don't think it would have hurt, MJ's, cachet, as far as to him being the greatest if they would have threw in 11 and 12. At least I would have got maybe got a couple cameos in there.
Yeah, a couple practice shots in there. I could see in there. I think that's a characteristic that Jordan and Kobe share very similarly, right? They would push you to a limit. Like I was talking to Phil Handy, which is the Lakers assistant coach now, and he said, Kobe would make sure to test you, even if you were an assistant coach, just to see what level he could take his mentality to, right? And I'm sure Jordan did that with a bunch of his teammates too. You just mentioned them. Like, was that the same relationship you had with Jordan, or was it different than other players, like the pressures that he kind of put on you?
It may have been a little different. I'm pretty much chill, pretty much laid back, and they always say don't mess with the quiet guy. So that's kind of been true through my entire life. Is like I don't really get into those sort of confrontations, right? Because if we're talking basketball, then we're doing basketball. But if we're talking anything else, then we're getting aggressive. Then we're aggressive outside of the basketball game. So, but for me, man, I played cards with him. I went to restaurants with him. We had conversations on the plane, in the locker room. So that's what I value the most, right? I mean, he could be hard on a teammate, but I kind of understood, what he was trying to get out of everybody. And it was a test. Like where I'm from, like you get tested all the time. Like they'll check your temperature to see, where you're at. I think that's what MJ, would do a lot, is just check your temperature to see how you're going to respond or react to certain situations. And me, I was always ready. I don't think he had to question if we got, into a playoff run, or, if our team was in a battle, or if our team was in a scuffle, I don't think he had any doubts that I would be right there, ready to help my team, reach that finish line.
So it brings up an interesting point though, watching Michael Jordan as the player, because I'm sure you admired him when you were in high school, college, coming out, right? That was his heyday. That was the 90s. He was dominant. And then to go from, watching him to being a teammate, it must be a weird transition, right?
Oh, it was completely weird. I was a free agent. So MJ actually signed me. So he was the boss. And then, we were obviously teammates. So, having a teammate conversation is very different than having a general manager conversation, right?
Yeah.
So, even a situation where him, making sure that the coach played another player during a certain stretch so he could make sure he got the pass exactly how he wanted the pass. Normally I would say something to a teammate if that was the case, but, he was a general manager. So, I mean, what could you really say?
Yeah.
He controlled the ship. So there was an interesting dynamic there. But again, it's like you said, I mean, it was MJ. So it was a guy that really the only guy that I knew, in the basketball space, because I didn't watch basketball much growing up. he just stood, in a certain light than anyone else. Yeah.